Good morning. Today is Tuesday, September 22nd, 2015. This is the regular meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Let the record reflect Commissioner Soboroff, Johnson, Figueroa Villa, and Saltzman are present, and we have a quorum. Number one on the agenda, Commission comments.
First of all, I'd like to remind everyone that anyone wishing to address the board on an agendized matter or during general public comment is requested to complete and submit a speaker card to a sergeant at arms for each agenda item on which you wish to speak. The sergeant at arms will deliver the speaker cards to the board secretary, who will call them in the order received. No speaker cards will be accepted once public comment has begun on the specific agenda item for which a card is being submitted, or with respect to general public comment, once the general public comment period has commenced. When your name is called, you have 2 minutes to speak from the podium on the agenda item. Any commissioner comments?
No, sir.
I just quickly want to say that yesterday I had the pleasure of addressing about 50 members of Suits in Solidarity. Suits in Solidarity was formed in 2014 by Supervisor Mark Ridley Thomas and businessman Kerman Maddox to advocate for criminal justice and law enforcement reform. There were a number of elected officials there, including Assemblyman Reggie Jones Sawyer, who is chair of the Legislative Black Caucus, Assemblyman Sebastian Ridley Thomas, LA Councilman Kern Price, and Supervisor Mark Ridley Thomas. We had a lively conversation, and the organization is very interested in the updated training we're going to be briefed on today, as well as the rollout of body cameras. I promised a follow-up meeting with our Inspector General as well as members of the command staff.
Okay, we do have three public comment cards. We have the Red Chief Hunt, Michael Novick, and Hamid Khan.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Matt Johnson. Thank you for following up and making this meeting a successful meeting today. The Red Chief Hunt thinks that the City of Los Angeles would like to give you a chance, and thanks for telling us what you have done so far by meeting with the people of our dignitaries. I comment today, this meeting is going good and going well, and I like to see more of this and more community relations throughout the Police Commission involving T-Pain and all the commissioners. Thank you, Michael Hunt.
Thank you for your comments. Good morning.
Morning. I'm very concerned. I see under commission comments that what you're supposed to be doing at this part of the meeting is requesting future agenda items and reports, and I'm very concerned that not a single member of the commission has requested an agenda item or report regarding the lack of action by Chief Beck regarding the out-of-policy killing of Ezell Ford, or the killing of Riedel Jones, or any of the other atrocities that have been taking place in the city under the auspices of the Police Commission and the Police Department. I'm very concerned that you're derelict in your duty to the public in looking into these matters and demanding action by the people under your control and direction. And I think that your attempt to proceed with business as usual when there's a grave crisis of confidence and merited crisis of confidence in the police and their ability to carry out public service and service to the people of the city. And you have all these slogans up here about protect and serve, but all the officers lined up here tend to spend their time kicking people out of these meetings, and I think that the reason that happens is because you're not doing your jobs, and that you really need to start doing your jobs, because if you don't, you'll continue to have opposition, because people don't trust what this commission does anymore than they trust what the chief does, or the line officers out there who have taken people's lives without any repercussions for them. The city treats these killings as a cost of doing business and pays people in settlements, and then goes on about their business of killing more people. And I think that's outrageous that nobody on this board has raised this issue and demanded any kind of response from the chief about it. And that's why I'm speaking on this topic of the commission comments, because none of you commented on it, and that's your job, not mine.
Thank you for your comments.
Hell you talking about? Say his name. 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 Hell you talking about?
Okay.
Hell you talking about? Say his name. Hell you talking about? Say his name. Say his name. Hell you talking
If these disruptions continue, we will have to call a recess, and you will be asked to leave.
Hell you talking about? Say his name. Hell you talking about? Say his name. He's there for it. Say his name. He's there for it. Say his name. Hell you talking about? Say his name. Hell you
Okay, this is the second and last warning.
hell you talking about?
Those of you being disruptive will be asked to leave.
He's there for it. Say his name. He's
Okay.
there for it.
We're going to take a recess. The 4 people being disruptive. Dude, and we'll,
Hell you talking about? Say his name. Hell you talking about? Say his name.
okay.
Say his name.
Taking a recess. Please clear the room. The 4 people being disruptive, ask them to leave.
Hell you talking about? Say his name. 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 He's there for it. Say his name. He's there for it. Say his name. He's there for it.
Okay, we're going to call the meeting back to order. Any more disruptions, we will ask those being disruptive immediately to leave. There's not going to be any further warnings.
Okay, the next comment card, Mr. Hamid Khan, followed by Melina Abdullah.
Good morning.
So it's very clear that the complete failure of this body is on public display. I mean, it's not just in public display in this closed-circuit TV. And Channel 35, the world is finding out that how this commission is completely, and it's I would say just an illegitimate body. I mean, there's no legitimacy left. There's no decorum left. I mean, you started off by reminding us of rules of decorum, but historically there's been no decorum in this body to begin with. You started talking about suits and solidarity. I mean, we've seen the suits and solidarity around that surround us that constantly kill, maim, and murder people. We've never seen any solidarity from you towards the community. We've never seen any solidarity for you reaching out to the community. People express their frustration. You booted them out. How many people are you going to continue to boot out? There's millions of people out there who now see the utter failure and disregard and dismissiveness of how you all conduct yourselves. So, again, you made these comments. One of the previous speakers spoke about that how you have completely failed to reach out to the community, how you have completely failed to build a relationship with the community, how you have completely failed to listen to the community, how you have completely failed to respond to requests. You talk about over here about just talking about agenda items. Time and again, we've come back and asked to agendize these items. Time and again, we've come back to ask you, request you that please, there's racial profiling going on. There's massive militarization going on. There is a constant sabotaging. There's a sabotaging of the consent decree that took place as well. You know, you have sham community hearings, but you completely keep on neglecting them. You choose not to, but then you talk about solidarity and suits. What do you expect people to do? I mean, what do you really expect people to do? To come back and say their piece in 2 minutes and just shut up and then go home? I mean, we keep on reminding you we will not shut up. We will not fall in line. We will not allow business as usual because this has to stop. This is an illegitimate and a failed body.
Thank you for your comments. Good morning.
I don't know what it is you're scared of. I don't know what it is why every time we speak the names of the people that you're supposed to be providing oversight for, you all run. Maybe it's because you don't want to do your jobs. Maybe it's because you don't want to bring justice for the families of Ezell Ford and Riddell Jones. Maybe it's because you're intentionally disrespecting and really targeting our community. You know, I know you're not dumb. And I know that you have no business being the president of a commission that you admittedly know nothing about. You know nothing about. You are an entertainment attorney. You didn't even know enough to say that the woman who was speaking last week didn't have protected speech because she was using hate speech. And then you target the people who say that's hate speech, shut it down. Instead, you kick us out the room. So they are using you. They are using you as a token so they can put a black face on white supremacy. That is what you are. That is what a house Negro is. Somebody who carries the water for white folks. Don't be a house Negro. Don't be a house Negro. You have a choice. You have a choice to really stand for the people who gave you life. You have a choice to stand for the people who struggled so you can sit in that chair. You have a choice to do something different, so do something different. Stop playing the games of releasing information to the public before you release information to Black Lives Matter and the family of Riddell Jones. Do you know what kind of hurt that caused her sister and father, that you released the information of Brett Ramirez, who murdered their sister and daughter, to the public before you released it to the family and to the people who are advocating for the family? So rules of decorum should begin with you. And so we're demanding that. And we're going to hold you accountable, Matt Johnson. Don't just be Tyler Perry and Oprah Winfrey and the face of white supremacist patriarchal capitalism. Be something more.
Thank you for your comments.
We're now on item number 2, report of the Chief of Police, Chief Beck.
Morning, Chief.
Good morning, Commissioners. This past Saturday night, I attended the Jack Webb Awards. I want to congratulate Commissioner Steve Sobroff, who was the honoree, the annual honoree of the Jack Webb Awards.
Black lives don't matter to you.
Black lives matter.
Black lives do not matter
There's
to
new
this
people.
body. You do not care about the people that you're supposed to represent. This is a lie. You all are a lie. You all deserve to be.
Okay, let's take a brief recess, and please, Sergeant at Arms, please remove the 3 people being disruptive from the room. Let's just stay.
You all deserve to be fired. Black lives matter.
Black lives matter. Black lives matter. Black lives matter. Black lives matter. Black lives matter. Black lives matter. Black lives matter.
You
Black
all
lives
deserve
matter.
to be fired.
Black lives matter.
You all deserve to be
Black
fired.
matter. Black lives matter. Black lives matter.
Why did you chase Ezell
Say his name.
and allow a racist
Say her name.
Say her name.
Say her name.
Say his name.
Say her name.
Why did you allow a racist bigot to speak from that microphone without permission, without authorization, without a comment card, and you chased the mother of Ezell Ford out of here, a grieving mother with no respect. You have no respect for Ezell Ford, for his family, for Riddell Jones and her family. You have no respect for the people of Los Angeles. You don't deserve to be sitting at that podium.
Okay, we'll bring the meeting back to order. Chief Beck, please continue. Sorry for the disruption.
No, not a problem, sir. So I wanted to congratulate Steve. I want to thank Sandy Figueroa for being there. It's an extremely worthy cause that they supported. Is for the LA Police Museum. All the funds raised go to that entity. So, Steve, thank you for taking the time to be an honoree, and thank you for what you've done over the last 2 years as president of the Police Commission. Small way of showing that. There will be obviously other ways that we do that. Over the weekend in Los Angeles, we made some progress on our gang violence issues that we've been dealing with for the past 6 weeks. We had 0 gang homicides and 3 gang-related shootings. Only one of those gang-related shootings was in the area that has been affected by the majority of gang violence, the Newton 77 Southeast trifecta. So far this year to date, we're at 19.3% increase in violent crime. We have a 9% increase in homicide. That has increased since I reported to you last, but not due to gang-related homicides. We had a number of very high-profile, particularly horrendous family violence issues that resulted in homicide. Overall, Part 1 crime is up 12.7%. Gang crime stands at 16.5% increase over last year and a 6.8% increase over 13. Traffic collisions are up by about 3,000 in the city of Los Angeles. We have 35,622 traffic collisions as of the 12th of September. Our driving under the influence collisions are also up. Hit and runs are up 15.9% in the most serious category, those that involve death or injury. Motor vehicle versus pedestrians, the most serious category is down 8.1%, and bicycle-involved traffic collisions are down 1.2% in the most serious category. We have 9,910 sworn personnel on payroll, 2,663 civilian, personnel on payroll, with 614 civilian vacancies. We have 391 reserve officers, 372 specialist volunteers, 61 chaplains, and 6,157 cadets in our program. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Any commissioner questions or comments?
Thank you, Chief.
How
We do
many
have-
public comments?
We have 7 public comment cards. We have the Red Chief Hunt, Michael Novick, Prentice Jenkins, and Don Modkins.
Thank you again. I'm part of those statistics. I've been arrested 70 times, so I know what statistics mean to you guys. Like I said, I'm still being harassed on Venice Beach regarding statistics and things like that. Here's what I want to see from here on out. Here's what we're all missing. We don't have a seat from the public community up there. We need somebody to represent us up there and to have a seat with their name on it. Number 2, we need to have a round table in the morning for statistics for that people are angry. From 8:30 to 9:30, before this meeting, we need to have a round table right here in this room for the people that are hurting and that is very angry at you guys so they can express their feelings, because it doesn't make any sense for you guys to keep on killing people without going on the federal decrees, with having an outside investigators for the people who needs to come in here and do an outside investigation for the people to make you guys accountable. And this is what everybody's talking about. We need to go back on the federal consent decree immediately, just like we did when Rodney King got beat, so that you guys can be accountable for your actions. Routine traffic stops do not end up in death. And no matter how you look at it, these people should not been put out of here because you guys don't have a round table for these people to come to and sit down and express their feelings. Each and every one of you guys should be ashamed of yourself. 8:30 to 9:30, I'm calling for a round table so that you guys can understand how we feel if I were you. And that's what any psychologist would say. If I were you, I would know how they feel. Another thing is, like I said, I keep on being harassed. They're trying to take me to jail over some bullshit. Chief Beck, you're responsible for it. Get it together. Call your people at the Pacific Division. I don't want Al Burker there anymore. I'm tired of her, and I'm tired of her crap. You don't become a Chief 1 and come a Chief 3 all in the same without going to another division. Get it taken care of, Chief. I'm speaking honestly. Thank you, Michael Hunt. Round table for the people, 8:30 to 9:30.
Thank you for your comments.
Michael Novick, Prentice Jenkins, Don Modkins, Karen Helfman,
Here comes Mr. Jenkins.
Prentice Jenkins, activist since 1991, publisher of City Life newsletter. Have a little show and tell again. Like to acknowledge Black Lives Matter and stop police spying.
This morning, they say he sexually assaulted a woman walking near Potrero Elementary.
Elementary School. She had just dropped off her child. Just after 12:30, officers spotted Logan's truck, a Ford F-150, a black one, near the school. When officers approached him, they noticed he had a taser, handcuffs, and a loaded handgun, and that he may have been driving under the influence, and they arrested him. Now, Logan faces charges of sexual assault, DUI, and having a loaded handgun near a school. We did try to reach out to the LA County Fire Department for comment on our story. We're told that everyone was in meetings tonight. Logan is expected to make his very first court appearance on Friday. That is the very latest here in Almonte.
Okay, folks, I've been telling you about these crazy firemen, gang stalking people, homosexual firemen following straight men around town, the epidemic of heroin addiction in the fire department across this country. Firemen are heroin addicts. And the police department won't investigate it because you call each other brothers. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. This man had handcuffs and a taser. He was going to put her in the trunk. This is an LA fire department. We don't know, what is he, a captain? I don't know what he is. But they're all crazy. Every last one of the firemen in the fire department are crazy, even at the top. That's why they can't do anything about it. You're going to get a lot of deaths. People are going to start killing firemen. You know, they've already started killing cops. They're going to start killing firemen in a second.
Thank you for your comments.
Don Watkins.
Good morning.
Hi, Matt Johnson. What was your jump in like? Did you get jumped in? I'm curious, like, how bad your bruises and wounds were, or how bad they'll get by the time you're like halfway through this. I can't believe, like, Beck, you still haven't done anything with Villegas and Wampler around these Elsdale. They were found out of policy months ago. What are you waiting for? Another rebellion? Is that what you want? I'm so tired of driving here every single Tuesday at this hour for these charades. I'll keep doing it because you keep killing our people, so I'll keep coming. But I'm tired of it, and people are tired. The city is tired. While we're still trying to get you to hold these two officers accountable and fire them, and after which, or if you don't, we'll have you fired. During this time, Riddell Jones is killed for a kitchen knife for $80. And where's Brett? Brett Ramirez. Where is he now? So now we got to chase you behind Brett too. You need to act. And you, good luck in this space and dealing with these officers. What is your connection to community anyway? Do you have grassroots? Do you have any real connection to community? Do you understand the pain, the hurt, the frustration, the anger that your community is dealing with? I'm strongly suggesting you to reach out and to reach deep into your own conscience, your family's conscience. We've all either been here or have very close loved ones who've all been here. I'm going to suggest you to do some real soul searching before you get too caught up in this. Beck, you need to act quickly.
Thank you for your comments.
Karen Hilfman, followed by Melina Abdullah, Hamid Khan, and Beth Baker.
Good morning.
Good morning. I was here last week imploring you to speak to the community. I'm speaking here in support of Black Lives Matter, second all the comments that have been made. And I asked last week about Riddell Jones, and I still have some questions. I don't know if you can answer them at this point, but I saw the news report in the paper this morning. The police officer who shot her said she was coming at them with a kitchen knife. The eyewitness who was parked in the alley said she saw the police shoot her in the back. We still don't know what the coroner's report has said, and I wonder how a conclusion can be drawn without the coroner's report unless the police have information that the community doesn't. So I'm wondering if any more information about the investigation can be shared this morning, or if any of those questions can be answered. I guess not. I'm really disappointed and would like to hear more from you. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, my name is Kane Everett, and I'm here as a member of South Central LA Community District 9. I was a member of the barrage of people who seen Ezell Ford murdered by the police, and I'm here to hold him accountable. I'm here on the shoulders of not only Ezell Ford, but Mike Brown and the number of countless African-American men who've been killed by the police all throughout the United States. And as I look at you guys' faces, I see disconnection, because none of you guys represent my community. None of you guys represent my generation. None of you guys represent my struggle. And that's difficult. It's difficult for me to speak to you guys when I feel like every time I see a face with a badge or with a uniform, I'm being harassed. It's difficult for me to speak when I feel as though me expressing my feelings, it will be completely deflated, you know? It's difficult for me to trust and believe that me expressing my issues that they would even be taken into consideration by people like Charlie Beck, who hasn't even held the two officers who killed Ezell Ford senselessly accountable. So I don't speak to them. I always come to speak to you guys, to keep you guys' heads up. You know, we are a small crowd, but we still here. And I just want to compel you guys to continue to say her name. You know, Sandra Bland, you know, continue to say his name. Ezell Ford, you know, say his name. Mike Brown, you know, because it could be me next, you know. And if I end up in the hands of the police, I did not kill myself, you know. And I'm here because I'm a member of this community. I've been in Los Angeles all my life. You know, I'm 29 years old, and it's been very difficult for me just to go to day-to-day, difficult for me to go to college, difficult for me to graduate. Because still, as I try, I'm being harassed. I'm being deprived of dignity and simple respect, you know. And I don't know how to ask for it back, but I am asking for justice.
Thank you for your comments.
Melina Abdullah, followed by Hamid Khan and Beth Baker.
So I don't know why the questions and the comments that we make are being treated as if they're rhetorical questions. When we say that we want justice, we want to know what's happened to the murderers of Ezell Ford, because Villegas and Wampler are murderers. We want to know what's happening to them. Those are not rhetorical questions. When we say we want the names of the name of the officer who killed Riddell Jones, and we want to know what's going to happen to him, that is not a rhetorical question. When we say we want justice and we want you, since you've chosen to take that seat, to actually stand for the community that birthed you, that's not a rhetorical challenge, right? It's not enough. You sit here, it's nice that you've learned that the word is disruptive, not disruptful, right? So I'm glad that you've used the correct word now, but it's not enough for you to sit here and read from a script. You need to really stand up. This is the reason that we tried to block your appointment and gave the name Akilah Sherrills, is because we knew Akilah Sherrills would actually represent the community. So now you can prove us wrong and you can actually represent the community. Stop reading the scripts that this billionaire white dude next to you gives you. Stop it. Stop trying to advance yourself and, really at the expense of your community. You are tied to us. When you take that damn suit off, guess what? You got a target on your back too. I don't care if you drive to Sherman Oaks, right? So stand up. Stand up. Demand that the police chief who works for you and works for us gives a real report. We don't give a damn about the stuff he's talking about. You know what we want to hear? We want to know what you are doing to those officers that work for you and kill people with your blessing. It's with your blessing. So are you going to get on board with him, or are you going to get on board with the right side? God is on our side. Who's on yours?
Thank you for your comments.
So a 2-minute report by this man, the chief of the police of Los Angeles Police Department. No questions asked that why LAPD has the highest number of shootings this year. Why? You're not going to answer that, are you? Once every week. No questions asked that every 2 weeks a person is being murdered by LAPD. No questions asked. Nothing in your report that LA leads the nation in the highest number of killings of people by the Los Angeles Police Department, of any city in the country. Nothing in your report. Nothing in your report that when the other commissioner asked you about that, how come 0 biased reports, which is racial profiling, is sustained, you came back just charging at them and saying, well, that's happening in the rest of the country. Nothing about that. Why is it like, every year since 2011, over 400 people are lying about biased policing? And it's not biased policing, it's racial profiling. Because you know what? You don't have the courage to put it in your report. You don't have the courage to put the truth in your report. They don't have the courage to listen, to hear the truth. They don't have the courage to follow the truth as well. So this is a sack of lies. Basically, that's what it is. This is basically a clusterfuck. That's what it comes down to. And unfortunately, we have to suffer as a result of that. Unfortunately, 16 people who have already been killed. You have Kate Mather sitting over here from the LA Times. She's reporting that. She's talking about it, the reporter from LA Times. She's talking about it. How come you don't talk about it? It's your department. Why does the press have to tell us? Why does the press have to tell us that your folks are the killers of the highest numbers of people in this country? Why? Because you don't have the courage, right? You have no integrity. Absolutely, they don't have any integrity. This man asks you about why 0 sustained? 0, right? You don't have the courage to report that your people sabotaged the consent decree. Do you? You don't have the courage to report that your people, under the guise of national security, engage in racial profiling. And look at him. He's sitting there dumbfounded going like, what the heck do I do now? Because you lie.
Thank you for your comments. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm overcome with emotion. It's hard to calm myself and speak articulately, but I'm going to give it a try. I'm a professor at Cal State University, and I've been there for 14 years. And every year I have students come in traumatized by police abuse, young people, some of them children under the age of 18, who come in bruised and battered with PTSD, scared of police officers. And so I want to translate to you what you look like to the people, because you clearly don't know. You look like monsters. You look like monsters in suits and badges. People are terrified of you. Now, I've talked with law enforcement officers about this. I've talked with LAPD. I've talked with sheriff officers. And I've said, why is it that when someone turns from you in fear and runs, you shoot them in the back like cowards? And they say, they just got to listen to me. If they would just listen to us, nothing bad would happen. What you don't understand is that you might as well be a zombie. You might as well be a wolf man. You might as well be a vampire, because that's what you're like to people on the street. They're terrified of you. You terrify them. Terrorists. That's right, you're terrorists. So I'm here to translate to you how the community sees you, because you clearly are unable to assimilate this information properly. And I'm here to speak for the thousands of young people who don't have the wherewithal to come here every Tuesday morning because they're terrified of you. They're terrified of being anywhere near police. They're walking around with PTSD, waiting to be shot in the back by cowards. And so I'm here to tell you that you are illegitimate. I'm here to tell you that you have no authority. I'm here to tell you that you have lost the respect of people. Authority does not come from a badge and a title and a little plaque in front of you and the desk you're hiding behind.
Thank you for your comments.
Authority comes from the respect of the people, and you've lost that respect. So this is a people's tribunal here.
Okay,
this is a people's
thank you for your
tribunal.
comments.
This is your jury.
Your time is up. Thank you.
Your judge will come to you later, but you have blood on your hands and you will be judged. And this is a people's tribunal, and we have found you guilty. We have found you
Thank you for
guilty
your
of murder.
comments. Please take your seat.
We have found you guilty of assassination. We have found you guilty
Please
of
take your
failing
seat.
to
Your time is
run
up.
democratic institutions. We have found you guilty of failing to listen to the people who...
Please take your seat, or I'm going to have to ask you to leave. We will take another brief recess. Sergeant at Arms, please remove those people being disruptive. Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order.
Thank
More
you.
public comments?
None on this item, sir. We're now on item number 3, consent agenda items. These items are considered to be routine and non-controversial, upon which the board is provided with adequate information for approval without inquiry or discussion. And we have 2 comment cards on the one item, 3A. This
Okay,
is
let's
Department-
call the cards, please.
Call the cards. Jamie Garcia and the Red Chief Hunt.
So again, my comment pretty much goes to Mr. Matt Johnson and Saltzman, because Saltzman does listen and does actually question the police once in a while. The rest of the folks stay pretty quiet or non-existent. But I was told that you didn't know much about policing and you were hoping to learn a lot about policing when you came here. So I wanted to start with just some facts. We're talking about $10,000 scholarship going to 10 different cadets. First of all, that's $1,000 towards about a $20,000 a year college tuition. So that's pretty much nothing. That's throwing pennies at the community. And so I wanted to kind of demonstrate why pennies are being thrown, why there's more prisons than there are colleges. But let's back up before we get to the bottom line. The first part of it is that the Urban Area Security Initiative has given $8 billion to domestic policing over the last 10 years. So that's $8 billion. $100 million has gone to local law enforcement, Long Beach and LA County, over the last 10 years. That's a lot of money. 52% of the LA's unrestricted budget goes into policing. So I'm not a mathematician, you're not a mathematician, but we can clearly see right now what the disparity is. Most of the money goes to policing. That's why children, youth, people who want to do different things with their lives are getting pennies and being told in a cultural way to go into policing, as if it's almost similar to the military. When you see how the military and their propaganda there is protect and serve, do something good for your community, that's what's starting to happen with policing. So now you have this cultural deference. Politically, you have all the power that you want. City council's behind you. Obviously, nobody here can even speak to Chief Beck without him coming to the rescue of his officers. I mean, last week, Saltzman tried to even raise the issue about why in the biased policing report there was 0 sustained, considering what has been going on nationally. Saltzman asked one question and Chief Beck instantly interrupts. Saltzman's really the only person here that raises any kind of issue. The rest of these people stay completely silent. So we really need to think about some things here and why, Chief Beck, why your police force takes most of the money. 52% of the unrestricted budget and federal funding, you know that's ridiculous, and you know that you guys do nothing for the community.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay, on this issue, let's see. Where do I stand? Donations for 10 college scholarships cadets. I agree with that. But I also agree that the people need a donation to have a round table every morning right here at 8:30 to 9:30 resolving their problems. Democrats solve problems and put people first. You guys have failed to solve the people's problems, and you guys have failed to sit down to talk to them. This is why they're so angry. Every morning, I'm requesting, the Red Chief Hunt is requesting a round table for the people to sit down and resolve their problems with all of you guys. And that's just as important as the scholarship money. And until you guys do that, I'm going to be protesting, and let's get that together so that these people can have a forum where they can express their feelings besides this without being disruptive. And from 8:30 to 9:30, Matt Johnson, I'm going to hold you responsible. I'm going to hold T-Pain responsible for putting that roundtable together at 8:30 to 9:30 with the people. I want to see it done immediately. Thank you. Give donations to that. Get it done.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have any more?
We have no other comments on this item. We're now on item number 4, regular.
We need a vote on this item.
Do we have we have a motion. Do we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you. We're now on item number 4, regular agenda items. Item 4A and 4B are verbal presentations. Would a commissioner wish to pull item 4C as special for discussion?
I move approval of item C.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed?
Thank you. 4A, verbal presentation and update from the commanding officer and Community Police Advisory Board representative regarding community-initiated problem-solving, crime strategies, and other programs and goals within the Wilshire area.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Roy Amamiya. I'm the co-chair of Community Police Advisory Board along with Captain Howard Leslie. And we're here to just report about our efforts. First of all, it's an honor and a privilege to serve. And the CPAB meets every month, the third Thursday, 7 to 8 p.m. We have about 25 to 30 active members and about maybe 10 to 15 sworn officers, senior lead officers, the sergeants, slow sergeants, as well as the captain. Next slide, please. We have a lot of community and business support. The captain has a roundtable. We have a lot of outreach. We have an outreach committee, which we interface with the public through open houses and other community activities. Next slide, please. The neighborhood count. We have a lot of neighborhood council support. Our division covers through Tom LaBonge, Paul Koretz, as well as President Herb Wesson. And so the neighborhood councils also rally and we support them. They attend our committees, our meetings, and we in turn also outreach to their committees and our emails. And we have a two-way street with our email and communications. Next slide.
And from this point, there's a lot of fundraising going on. A lot of this money goes towards the kids so we can get them out to do things they wouldn't experience in other areas of their life. This year, we're trying to bring back the golf tournament back to Wilshire. We've worked out a deal with the Wilshire Country Club, so we'll be able to go back there and maybe hopefully get some sponsorship and bring some people from the community of Wilshire Division itself back into helping us support that.
Where do the funds go that you raise?
Most of the funds, 95% go to what the next slide is, which is getting the kids out doing things. Get them out to the beaches. We had them in a surf camp this year. We had them up at the mountains in a snowboarding club. And also, we took them down. We're lucky because we have Museum Row. We take them to the museums. We took them to tar pits. We took them to LACMA. Stuff they just aren't able to experience without this type of program. But also, they're doing volunteer work. They're going out. They were out for the 4th of July at Wilshire Country Club. They helped there with crowd control. They helped out at the Ethiopian Festival. That was this weekend. They were coming out and helping out with the outreach as well as the crowd control issues. So different events, and sometimes they're paid for those events, and we use that to help feed them for the day. Great. Next slide, please. And that's really a lot of the stuff they're doing right there is the marathon, out to the museums, the beach trips they've been on, the surf camp, which is a great deal for us. They've been very good to us, giving us a cut rate on that and helping us get more kids in that program. I have to admit, it's pretty nice to see the kids be able to experience that, get on a surfboard, actually experience something they would never experience.
How many kids are involved in the program?
Oh, geez. We have just about 100 signed up who consistently show up. I would say we're right about 40 to 50%.
Great. And how many officers are involved?
I have 2 Crow officers, a Crow sergeant, and 9 slow officers and a slow sergeant. Next slide, please. Which leads into our outreach efforts, which tie in with our crime strategy efforts. Beginning of the year, we started a big push with our foot beats. Now, obviously, we can't put a foot beat out there 7 days a week because of our assets. However, we were able to put them out there on different watches, and the officers basically stop, get out of the car, and do a designated amount of time in certain areas that we designated based on the crime activity, and also based on how many people we can get to in a short period of time. And if I do that 3 times a day on the 3 major watches, it seems like a foot beat. However, inside one specific location, the Grove, we were able to get a 7-day deployment in there. Since we started that program, when I looked at all of those areas, we are down 11% in theft, 16% in Part 1 crime. In the RD, the reporting district that covers the Grove, we're down 43% in theft and 37% in Part 1 crime. It's extremely effective, just manpower intensive. We've partnered with the Midtown Homeless Outreach Alliance. It's a new program. They're trying to bring in organizations to Wilshire such as PATH and LASA, and also volunteer work. We have some success stories. We're able to get some people into programs, into mental health programs, get into some housing vouchers. A great story about a young man we found living under a bridge who was suffering from PTSD, who was a veteran, and we were able to get him into the program at the VA, walk him in, sign him in, make sure he's there and he's doing well. In our forums, we've had an African American forum, the firefighter forum, the Jewish forum. These are great ways to meet people, not just in the community, but within the city themselves, firefighters, and talk about policies, talk about issues we're seeing on a daily basis that maybe their policy doesn't work with our policy and how we can get through that as a division. One particular thing was they would like it if we were with them sometimes in the ambulance transporting somebody, and I made sure that's something that's happening at Wilshire Division. Also, our social media aspect is huge for us in Wilshire Division. We have a Twitter account with about 10,000 people. We created our own phone app, which after the general staff meeting yesterday, I discovered with the personal body cameras, the Samsung phone goes along with that, and a part of the plan is to download phone apps. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. And then with the phone app, what we were able to develop is Wilshire has its own specific phone app. We have it downloaded about 1,000 phones right now, and it leads you to all sorts of crime information, all sorts of information based on not just the crime, but how to volunteer, our outreach programs, and we also have links that take you to the different city councils, the different neighborhood councils, and also 311. And if you go to the very bottom of that app, we can get you to a password-protected page for the officers. They open that up, and now all the crime information, the latest statistics, wanted people are all on that phone app. And I'm actually really excited about that because when we do get the cameras, we can actually put that phone app on those cameras specifically. Thank you.
How are you getting the word out about the app to the community?
We've reached out to our city councils on their email tree, our neighborhood councils, our HOA meetings, and also whenever the senior leads have a meeting. And with our foot beats, we've created our own business cards. So when they're walking up and down La Brea, walking up and down Melrose and Fairfax, and they're meeting the business owners or just anybody they talk to, they're handing those cards out. It has all the social media locations. Also, when they're walking down those streets, it's very important that they're talking to the homeless, getting to know if they want any services, and if they do, particularly I'm really pushing if we find any veterans, how we can get them the service, because that's already set up. It's extremely easy to get them services as long as we can find them.
The officers are getting to know the kids getting to know the officers as people.
You know, and there's a great story about that, absolutely, sir. And that's the whole purpose. During our African American Forum, we're very, very fortunate. We had about 100-plus people show up to that. And we had presentations from one young lady. She lived in Southwest. She was part of the Wilshire Cadet Program, and she went on to be one of the senior vice presidents of UPS, and she handles the entire Northern California region. And we reached out to her. She came back, and she gave us a nice presentation on how the program taught her not to be afraid of police, to know them on a personal level, to kind of get to know them. And that's the whole purpose of what the program's about, is to getting to build the relationship rather than just have a partnership.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. You have a nice day.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Great job.
We do have 4 public comment cards. We have Prentice Jenkins, Nancy Allen, Michael Williams, and Ted Hayes.
Prentice Jenkins, City Life newsletter, activist since 1991. I want to know, in terms of this initiated problem solving, does this problem solving also include stopping and solving the crime of cops and firemen stalking individuals? I'm a targeted individual. My colleague Nancy Allen is a targeted individual, and we represent targeted individuals all over the country that call us, talking about cops stalking them and police firemen running by their houses, blaring horns and sirens. There's a serious epidemic of mental illness in the police and fire department. And when these guys deteriorate mentally, then the public deteriorates mentally. Then what happens? Innocent cops are shot to death by crazy fools who are just as crazy as some of the cops. Crazy cops stalk people. Then innocent cops get killed by crazy people who were being stalked by cops, or heard cops are stalking people. Yes, cops do stalk people. I showed the chief a video of a cop who molested two 10-year-old girls, LAPD officer. You should have seen the chief's face. This is a chief I like, and you should have seen his face. I guess he hadn't seen that video. Channel 5 had it, of a cop molesting two 10-year-old girls. So you do have perverts amongst your ranks. You just don't know who they are. There are actually pervert cops amongst your ranks. Cops who molest children, cops who stalk men, gay cops who stalk men, straight cops gay cops who stalk straight men. You really have perverts among your ranks. The fire department has perverts amongst its ranks. 9,000 cops, if 10% are perverts, you got 900 cops.
Thank you for your comments. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Nancy Allen. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to at least address the commission. I have been listening to a lot of my colleagues in the community here, and many of them are correct. There is no one up here that's representing the community. And I'm that's mind-boggling to me. I'm a master's level social worker. Someone should be up there representing the community. You should have someone set aside to deal with these things. I'm sure you guys are intelligent people. You already know that. You probably have someone, I guess, in your ranks that deal with issues like this, victim issues, or community issues. Someone should be there, and that's my point. He is correct. I am, quote unquote, a targeted individual. I think there's something should be done about organized stalking. There's organized stalking that's happening across LA County, and something should be done about that. I think that if you're not all these things that a lot of my colleagues here are saying about you, you need to stand up and take back the pride for the police department. We have footage that shows, news footage that shows that the police department as well as the fire department have been tasked with this extra eyes, to watch people and to follow people and things of that. We actually have footage to that effect. This isn't something that I'm, making up. I think your organization is being compromised, and you should take back your pride, take back your honor in your organization. If these people are in fact not correct with what they're saying about you, stand up and show them.
Thank you for your comments.
How you doing?
Good morning.
Former Chief Beck, how are you? Steve, you got bumped down a little bit. That's all right. Is this like a Dick Cheney Bush thing? You the brains, he the face? Is that what it is? Okay. I'm not going to answer my question. What I want to talk about is the fact that they say that crime is going down, but it's not because of the police. It's because of community organizations like Black Lives Matter, LA Can, other organizations that are rallying the community, the black community specifically, to start working together to stop police brutality and violence. That's what's stopping the crime. That's what's taking the crime down. The police have nothing to do with it because the police are the ones that are committing the crimes. If you don't believe me, look at the stats of crime among individuals in Los Angeles, and then look at the amount of people who have been killed by the police. It's very different. It's very different. Look at those stats. It has nothing to do with police or police intervention or whatever. It's because of people in the community building a community that is united against police violence and brutality that you guys are perpetuating. You have a chief here who, again, will not hold any officers responsible, who has said he's not going to hold any officers responsible who break protocol and end up killing someone. And you have him on your commission, you have him as your chief. You guys have the opportunity and you have the power to get rid of him. But you refuse to do it. Why? Because you're a part of the system. You're a part of what is the problem with Los Angeles. You're a part of keeping police who are killing people, who are committing crimes, who are corrupt in your ranks. This is supposed to be a forum for people to come and speak to you, but yet there's hostility. You guys try to curtail our freedom of speech. You try to curtail what we can say to you guys. It's the only reason why we're hostile towards you is because you're not listening to us.
Thank you for your comments.
Ted Hayes. Mr. Hayes.
Good morning.
Comedy shows, mindless playthings. At one time, there was an attempt to make Markham High School's auditorium in Watts a movie theater, Mr. Johnson. I stopped that. One man stopped it because they said, if you can't educate them, let's entertain them. That's why you have to go, Mr. Johnson. There will be no Hollywood seat on this board if I have anything to do with it. Okay? First it was Miss whomever, and now you. Your industry has been the worst thing that ever happened to the black community. Let's understand how your industry functions. Denzel Washington, Training Day, a rogue officer, bad father, murderer. Halle Berry, the sheriff kills her black man, and they conveniently killed the child. Both those actors got nominations for Academy Awards. Your industry just this week, How to Get Away with Murder. Did I hear Johnny Cochran? So this is what you do to the black community. Then there was Barbershop, the cultural aspect of the black community, where Cedric the Entertainer says all Rosa Parks did was sit on her black ass. An icon. And she's ridiculed and humiliated by your industry, the people like you. More importantly, sir, your background is the Boys and Girls Club and the Urban League. What did they do about the attempt to deal with the community? Nothing, absolutely nothing. So I will be talking about this until you decide to weather the storm or leave. But there will be no entertainment on the police commission.
Thank you for your comments.
There are no other comment cards on this item, sir. We're now on item 4B, Department's verbal presentation and discussion relative to an overview of police officer training. And we do have comment cards on this item.
Morning, guys.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Deputy Chief Bill Murphy, Commanding Officer of Police Sciences and Training Bureau.
And I'm Dr. Luann Pinnell, the Director of Police Training and Education.
What we want to do today is give you an overview of training. We've undertaken a tremendous amount of training, a tremendous amount of research over the last year and a half. We've implemented a lot of new training programs and want to take an opportunity to share those with you. You may not be aware of them, and by all means, at any point, just ask any questions, or at the end, there'll be a Q&A period. Yeah, real quickly, we wanted to begin with an overview of the Police Academy from the simple perspective that the Police Academy is job number one. Not to steal the Ford model that they used to do in their commercials, but it really is for us. If we don't get the academy right, we could never make up for it in all the in-service training. So about 7 or 8 years ago, Dr. Pinnell, myself, At that time, I was a captain, commanding officer of the academy, director of the police academy. We decided to undertake 920 hours of instruction. We redid the entire police academy with the support of POST, made it lecture, took it from lecture-based to problem-based, facilitation, adult learning theory. So we want to do a quick overview of that, and Dr. Pinnell is going to share that with you. It sets the stage for all the in-service training that we will talk about a little bit later.
I think the first part that we had to look at is recognizing that as soon as we train somebody, the future is already.
Can you speak into the mic?
Okay, sorry. Is there? Okay. As soon as we train somebody, we are already training them for 5 and 10 years and 15 years out. And one of our concerns is that the way that policing changes constantly and the community changes, we have a lot that we need to prepare them for, but the critical thinking component is really, really important. So when we looked at the academy and how to look at those 920 hours, as a base, we wanted to say we want police officers who are self-motivated, interdependent with the community, community-oriented, critical thinkers, and problem solvers. So how do we do that? We have to look at the very way that we train, because certainly lecturing to people or just giving them notes or making them pass a test is not going to be sufficient for changing hearts and minds. So we looked at how we learn. We have the cognitive, the psychomotor, and the affective. Those are basics for education. What do we have to do? The thinking, the physical component, and the emotional. So we start with the training triangle, and the concept there is to train the whole person. We don't want to just have while tactics is important, it is not the whole triangle. It is not the whole person. We won't go into CAPRA right now, our critical thinking problem-solving model, but we want to create critical thinkers that every time they come into a situation that they have to look through and process the law and the application and things like that. The mission, vision, values is critical as the base of the triangle, because what we do has to be based on the mission, vision, and values that are set both by the department and the community. So that represents the affective component. So training this way is very different across the country, and so is a significant shift for our department to look at. I already mentioned training the whole person. That's looking at the individual. But the other concept we really have shifted is to train in a team, by a team, to be a team. And we extend that team concept beyond the individual to the community as well. The community is another team that we need to work with. And so if we can recognize the mission, vision, values of the teams that we are working with as well, understanding where communities come from and what they are needing, they are another team that we need to work with. And we can get so much more done if we are all working in that way. This is not an easy thing to teach it from the very beginning, but we're starting there. And what we want you to hear in throughout the rest of our training components is that we are weaving that into every other training component. The last part I want to mention is training through an event, not to an event. It is really easy to train to a crisis because we have a lot of them and we take those seriously. But we want to train through an event where we don't just handle the crisis for that day. We want to think all the way through to what needs to happen the next morning. What does the community need to hear back? What do the officers need to hear back, so that the mistakes that we maybe made yesterday are improved on tomorrow, but also the things that we did well are replicated, and it just doesn't stay with one officer or one team. Doing that across 13,000 people in our department is an ongoing commitment and effort that we will continue to do. In the old format,
Okay, we'll take another brief recess. Sergeant at Arms, please remove those individuals who are being disruptive.
Say your name. Redale
Jones. Say her name. Riedel Jones. Say her name. Riedel Jones. Say his name. Ezel Ford. Say his name. Ezel Ford. Say her name. Riedel Jones. Say her name. Riedel Jones. Say his name. Ezel Ford. She hasn't even said anything. You gonna let them kick somebody out who hasn't even said anything? You're in charge of them. Why is he trying to remove people who aren't even saying anything? Why is he trying to remove somebody who's just sitting here?
Remove everyone who's being disruptive, please.
Who was being disruptive? Who else was being disruptive? Disruptful, you mean? Disruptful. Are you looking that up? Uh-oh. Why?
Okay, let's go.
Ready?
Okay, we'll bring the meeting back to order, please. Sorry for the disruption. We're very anxious for you to continue.
Mr. President, just for the record, the audience has been invited back in, and they will arrive as they want to come back in. They have been invited back in.
Okay.
So to continue, in our old format, and by the way, this is kind of consistent across a lot of law enforcement training. And so in the past, we kind of had instructors come and teach the class and then go back to their unit. Now what we have to create that team concept, we have those officers who are responsible for different sections of training to come together as a team, and they have a team sergeant. And so what we want to model for the new officers is that policing is dynamic, it's fluid, it changes and depends on your skills and abilities. So they're going to see a team working together, and they work in teams at their tables. We actually name the tables after divisions so that they start the connection with we are all on teams. And then partway through the academy, we actually transfer them to a new division because that could happen too. So in our new format, the facilitators stay with the class for a full 6 months. They do team teaching and daily cross-training. There's a lot of team and individual accountability. We integrate the learning blocks. Instead of just teaching everything on one concept, taking a test and forgetting about it, we want to weave the concepts together the way it is in the field as much as we can. We train to competencies, and we have very little downtime. So that gives kind of the background of what we started with in the redesign of the academy, and now we're going to move into what we're doing with in-service.
Yeah, we periodically conduct reviews of training because we're always looking to improve training. About a year and a half ago, in February of 2014, we had a shooting. It was tied to the Christopher Dorner incident. The chief Beck grabbed me. Then Chief of Staff Rick Jacobs said, hey, can you conduct a review of training, specifically look at use of force, look at officer-involved shootings, under the idea of try to create new training that would improve performance and hopefully reduce the numbers of uses of force in officer-involved shootings. So that's where it began with. And that was our initial focus. Obviously, beginning last year, in August, there were several controversial incidents that occurred. Ferguson, the Garner incident, our own Ezel Ford. That kind of changed the focus. We had known that building public trust and preservation of life were important topics. In fact, in a second, I'll get into the research. But really what changes is the dynamic is how do you actually teach in a training environment how to build public trust and preservation of life. So that became another focus for us. Our research methodology, I won't go through all these bullets, but basically we conducted a lot of internal research, external research. We reached out to a lot of partners, looked at all the statistics that we had. We asked a lot of people, I got a slide in a second about contacts, what do they do about use of force training, how do they do training protocols, and ultimately what we wanted to do is recommend some changes to improve training. Again, didn't do this in a vacuum. We reached out to a whole bunch of major players, the FBI, New York, Chicago, Dallas, Oakland, whoever had a good training program or whoever had a good idea on use of force de-escalation, public trust. we listen to them. And in addition to that, know that Dr. Pennell and myself also travel to several conferences. We get asked a lot because we have a reputation of for providing outstanding training. So we get asked to go to like PERF conferences and speak on this particular topic. And at those conferences, we spoke at one about 2 or 3 months ago. PERF put it together, which is Police Executive Research Forum. There were 350 chiefs of police from all throughout the United States, Canada, England, Australia, and we were there specifically to talk about training. And those are great network times for us. We talk with a lot of other agencies about how they're handling particular topics. Also, just want you to know that the Office of the Inspector General, when we create new training, we've been sharing that with them. We have given Django the 33-page expanded course outline for our 10-hour use of force update that I'll talk about a little bit later. Today at 2 o'clock or whenever we're done with closed session, we're going to go over police science leadership, and we're going to give them a presentation and give them the curriculum. So your staff has been briefed on this. Training components, I won't go through all of these, but after literally months and months of research, talking to all these players about it, it ended up being around 14 or 15 different topics that you want to pay attention to. The value of the topics are you're going to go and assess your own training on these topics, and ultimately you want to develop training to improve on these particular topics. So I'll just go through a couple of them real quickly. For example, command and control. That is exceptionally important. If you look back on the LAPD about 2012, Commissioner Saltzman was on the commission back then. We had a problem with supervisors getting involved in officer-involved shootings. We took that mission on. We ended up creating the supervisor update class, 24 hours of instruction. The whole middle day, 8 hours in the middle, is all about command and control. So these particular topics, we knew most of them. In a second, I'll talk about validating. We knew most of them were very, very important, but we wanted to take a snapshot of where we were teaching them and how we could improve. Reality-based training is like the military. What you want to do is best as you can duplicate what occurs on the streets. Now, we cannot shoot live rounds at our officers, but we can't do that. But what we can do is put them in situations where their stress level goes tremendously up. We get to see if they can apply the use of force to actual tactical concepts. And in reality-based training, there are different levels of it. One level would be like force option simulators. I believe all the commissioners have been in a room. It's a big screen. We'll run scenarios that can take different options. So we could test their decision-making. The highest level of that is called force on force. That is when you go to an academy setting and you run scenarios against academy instructors, and you use either simunitions, which the public would call paintball, where you're shooting basically a soapy substance, or a technology that we worked with a vendor at Stress Vest Technology. If you have kids, you can think of like laser tag. That's the version of that where you would shoot and it's a laser that hits. The idea behind that force on force is there's a consequence to the training, and that's very, very important. A police officer can't deny that they had a problem if there's paint all over them because they actually got shot in that particular scenario. So we underwent a lot of review on our reality-based training. Command presence, you got to be professional. Talking about use of force de-escalation, there's study after study that says it's really a two-way analysis that goes on between the police officer and the suspect. The suspect is looking at the police officer, wondering, hey, can I take a different path? If they don't act like a police officer, they're not professional, it could lead to consequences that you don't want. And a couple other things real quickly down there, like debriefing real-life use of force incidents. In the past, in the LAPD, we've had shooting after shooting in our history. We have lots of examples of use of force. There was a reluctance to use that material. Some of it is understandable. There may be risk management lawsuits or something like that with it. But we have to get past that. We have to actually use the real scenario. So that's what we do now. We'll actually go to our firearms, our tactics instructors. Twice a year, we bring in FID instructors, and we run real-life shootings so that they know exactly how it is. It gives them a better perspective on when they get to actually teach in the classroom, whether it's the academy or in service. These are real scenarios, and these are real tactical debrief issues that come up in them. So that's our philosophy now. These last four are really... Oh, yeah. Yep.
The reality-based training.
Yes.
And I know we talked a little bit about this before when it involves a knife.
Yes, absolutely. There are different types of reality-based training, and we'll use different weapons. For example, I'll talk a little bit later about that 10-hour use of force update, and we're going to have 7 scenarios. This is live on Channel 35, so I can't get into tremendous detail because we're going to put 10,000 officers through it. But some of them will involve weapons that are other than firearms, because we want to see if they'll go ahead and use tactical concepts that we teach them, distance plus cover equals time, if they use the verbalization skills, the communication skills that we do. And trust me, in many of those scenarios, I don't want to give the number out there, if they do it right and they use the right communication skills, then there should be no use of force. And that's our goal. The goal in all this, we prefer never to use of force. I'll share statistics with you in a second about the ratios of use of force to arrest, and I think it might be a little bit of an eye-opener if you haven't seen these before. But okay, and so these are the 4 hot topics in the United States today. When we went to that use of force conference and spoke, everybody was talking about them. How do you build public trust? How do you preservation of life as a goal for you in your use of force policy? Constitutional policing is are you sure that your officers know basic, simple law? Do they know consensual encounters, reasonable suspicion, probable cause, and can they in fact do those out in the street? Use of force de-escalation, everybody in the nation's talking about that. How do you do it? How do you teach in a training environment? Real quickly in the training review, both Dr. Pennell and myself, back then it was Assistant Chief Sandy Jo MacArthur, we validate all these components. We didn't want to go ahead and do an analysis unless the component we thought was very important, like command and control. And also our subject matter experts. We had multiple meetings with our firearms instructors, the tactics instructors, the human relations instructors, and said, do you believe in these concepts? Because we're going to conduct a big review. We're going to develop a whole bunch of new training on that. Okay, I just want to share real quickly some statistical data.
Can you just spend just a few more, elaborate a little bit more on how you're selecting the trainers and how you're training them and evaluating their effectiveness?
Yes. First of all, we have several levels of instructor development. The first one is AICC Academy Instructor course, and that's the basic one. In order to teach in the police academy, you have to go through that 40-hour course, and you have to pass it. You have to actually do a presentation at the end. After that, depending upon the type of instruction that you're going to give, you have to match the skill set. For example, Post as Peace Officer Standards and Training, they set the criteria, the minimum level of instructor for everybody in the state. And they also set basically a regulation called 1070. So if you were to teach firearms, you have to prove to Post in the academy that you went through HITS, which is Handgun Instructor School, Firearms Instructor School, Rifle Instructor School. To become like a firearms instructor, you're probably looking in the vicinity of maybe 250 hours of specialized instruction to teach. Now, in selection, it's a very intense process that we do in the academy. We'll go through backgrounds on the people. We'll have interviews. It's a desirable position because training is always like a centerpiece for the police department. So we spend a lot of time in the selection process for that. In the field, same thing. You'd go to AICC. In the field, also, we'll do a lot of train the trainer for say instruction at the divisional level. But it's pretty intensive, and I don't know if you want to add anything more to it.
Well, I guess just what we would say is that as any new training comes up, that train the trainer piece becomes critical before you can go teach the course. So usually somebody will attend the course, then they'll go through the train the trainer on the course, they'll be shadowed and evaluated by the rest of the team who knows how it's supposed to go, and that'll all happen before they are then implemented into the course, whatever block or piece they are responsible for.
Do we
Yeah.
do student evaluations as well?
Yes, absolutely. Every single class has student evaluations. They're reviewed by the staff there. If you don't hit a certain particular level, it's like a Likert scale, 1 to 5. We would bring them in. We'd give them retraining, and eventually, if you can't be an effective trainer, we'd just ask you to leave. It's not a skill set that everybody can master. So that's all in place. For
Great. Thank you.
that answer? Okay. Yep. Okay. So we did the training review. I'll move on from that. Statistics real quickly, just to put this in perspective. I read a PERF report, and I agree 100% that unfortunately in law enforcement we've done a really bad job explaining how little use of force that police officers actually get involved in, and I want to share this just for food for thought. Public contacts at 1.6 million. What this is a combination of data from communications division, that's radio calls, and field data reports. A field data report is when police officers out in the field would pull somebody over for a traffic stop or a PED stop. We collect that data. If you added that up for 2014, it was the 1.6 million.
That's just not calls.
It's more than calls. It's stops that observational stops that the officers.
911 called LAPD is not considered a public contact?
It would be. That's in that too. So that's roughly, I don't have the thing, I think about 700,000 or so are those radio calls, and the rest were FDRs. And the reason we selected that, obviously, there's no way to put a number at all the public contacts that a police officer does. It's millions. I mean, they go to community meetings. They're talking with people all day long. We wanted to look at where they could be a potential detention or a police action. So that's why we went with radio calls and FDRs. The officers are deciding to make the stop on the FDR. So it's a good way to look at it. Non-categorical use of force, that 1865, I will break that down for you in just a second, and you'll understand what that is. You know, last year we had an officer-involved shooting, and this is non-dog or unintentional. And unintentional for the public is when an officer mishandles their weapon. They might shoot the locker or so, but it's not anything to do with the public at all.
Excuse me, Chief.
Yep.
I'm just curious on this. We don't show. You're not showing the categorical uses of force. I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, this is the shooting on the 30. I could put all categoricals in there.
Right. I'm sorry. I mean, on the page we see non-cats and OIS, non-dog, non-unintentional. I'm just curious. We're not seeing categorical. And if you have those numbers,
I could run that for you. This was just to put it in perspective on some of the ratios.
This is an overall number.
Does every cat come to the commission?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I mean, it would probably be. I mean,
150.
I think that if you threw all cats in there, it might be 100 or so. Yeah. I don't think the ratios are going to go that far off. It'll be minuscule, to be perfectly frank. But I just wanted to share some, and specifically one ratio I want to share. But first, for the public, let me explain non-cats. We had 1,865 last year. Taser use would be 344. Beanbags was 48. I won't read them all. The non-lethal, that 1,350, which is about 2/3, that's when a police officer used physical force. They might do a twist lock. It could be body weight on the person. So, and these are the ratios. And I could get you the categorical, but I don't think it would change these. You know, the numbers compared to that 1.6 million would be extremely small. The one I do want to point out is use of force to arrest. That very last bullet, 1.34%. If you realize that, what that really means is if you take the reverse number, 98.7% of the time when we are going to make an actual arrest, we don't use force, any force at all. 98.7. So. We talk people to jail, which is what we want to do, and that's the point of training. We actually want to use no force at all, and these are just stats that I want to share with you. All right, real quickly, training completed. We went months and months of evaluation. We started redesigning training. We changed the qualification course. That course hadn't been changed in 26 years. Last time we looked at it was when we went from revolvers to the 92F, which is a 9mm Beretta. We slowed the course down, to be perfectly frank. We eliminated weekend shooting, put TVs up all around it. So if you're waiting in line, we're talking about assessment, we're talking about de-escalation, we're talking about all the points we want to do while you're actually in line. So there's TVs all over the place. Thought about what we wanted to do. MACTEC, that basically is a multi-assault counterterrorism application course. It's if you think about Columbine years ago, that created a training called Immediate Action Rapid Deployment, or dealing with an active shooter. MACTEC is dealing with multiple active shooters. It really came out of Mumbai when that terrorist hit multiple hotels. Under review, we started looking at that, and we said, hey, we need a conventional test back in there. When it was immediate action rapid deployment, we used to test the officers to see if they could determine if it is a barricaded suspect, which SWAT would handle, or it was form up in a contact team and go in there. So that's just a quick little idea of what we were doing with this. Down the bottom, actually on fair and impartial policing, because I don't want to do every single one. Do you want to go ahead and do that one?
So Dr. Lori Friedel, out of the University, I believe, of Florida, she has been working on fair and impartial policing and presenting that across the nation. We were fortunate enough to get her to come in December of last year and present to all command staff. What we wanted our command staff to look at, are there things in our practices, by the language we use, by the ways that we invite or don't invite people, is there things that we should be looking at of unintentional bias and how that is conveyed to the community, and so that our language and how we talk and think and respond is inclusive of the community, but also that we look at things that we just get tied to because we've had them for so many years, the same terminology and things like that. So they came in for, all the command staff did a 8-hour training. What we've done since then is we are expanding that. Her and her team will come back and train 25 of our officers and civilians to do a train the trainer for us, so that we can then implement that at different levels of the organization. What we want to do is not just save things till the end, and when you're in management, we want to make sure that those themes are woven all the way through, so that it's not a surprise to any employee on the LAPD that fair and impartial policing is an important concept.
One new variable that's going to be coming in this year that has never been in before, that is probably can have significant, huge impact on this, is the body cameras. So the relationship between you guys, from the time we get results to the time you start tweaking the training, it's almost got to be like a real-time communication. And do you have that with the people that are going to?
Yeah, we're constantly updating training on information that we're getting.
But we're trying to use that technology better to enhance both what we do in training and the speed with which we can implement that. The other thing that we're looking at with our supervisors is really helping the supervisor to be kind of a field trainer, right? That they never lose that concept that we're constantly developing people, so that as they are sitting down in real time after that incident, they are much more comfortable in facilitating a discussion, not just saying don't do that anymore if you don't know why or what the problem was or where the problem started. So we want them to pull that out a little bit more and enhance our officers in that moment.
Yeah, it would be great to incorporate actual footage from real officer community member encounters into the training once you have the access to that. I'm sure you have some now.
Yeah, we're doing that. In fact, we work on Human Relations Commission, and we're looking for testimonies. We want to get the feedback. And in fact, when we get into police science leadership, we'll discuss that later. We want the officers. One part of it is we're going to break down between what the community believes officers' actions are and what the officers believe, and what we'll get that right from testimonies right from the community. So it's important to do that. Real quickly on this, LAPD University. This was sort of the brainchild of Dr. Friedel. I don't know if you want to handle that, or I'll.
Sure. Just quickly. We have so many courses and things that we've developed over the years, and what we wanted to do is create the LAPD University concept to be more what training should happen first. In the past, it's we kind of had everything in alphabetical order, and you talk to a friend to see which training you should go to. we are taking a university model where we've cataloged. These are the investigative courses. So if your academy is your 100 level course, well, what's your 200 level courses? And what would you want to have before you become an instructor? And so that we can tailor a little bit more the development of our officers. We think it will help also the supervisors to say, where are your gaps? And if you want to become a detective, maybe you should start taking some of these courses to enhance that direction. So we really see that as an improvement, both in identifying where our gaps are, and that'll come a little bit later, but also in as we develop new training, where should that fit in?
And that last bullet there, the provide training on national discussion of building public trust and preservation of life. I'm going to go into that in a little bit of detail. Right now, we're finishing these up. I believe we'll go for another 2 or 3 weeks. All throughout the department, it's a mandatory 5 hours. Some areas did it up to 6 or 6.5 hours because they were given the ability to put a specific emphasis on what may be important for them. Maybe in the Valley Bureau, they'll also talk about the traffic or some other issue. But this was good. I did several of these myself. I was got great feedback from the officers that we had in the audience. We actually did a history of the LAPD. We point out the words that I would use. We've had many Fergusons in our history, to be perfectly frank. If you go back in LAPD, we have not always treated people with respect. We have, especially persons of color, to be perfectly frank. We have this frank discussion with everybody. And the reason we wanted to do it is that a lot of our patrol forces are young officers. I mean, if you go into a police station in a roll call room, they're all like at 5 years, 6 years or so. So when we bring up like the LA riots or Rodney King or anything like that, they don't have any personal experience. Well, I have personal experience. I was one of 40 officers on the streets of Southeast when the riots broke. So we would share stories, the hostility of back then, how it impacted our relationships. And bottom line, when you look at all these bullets, we're not going back there. We are absolutely not going back there. And so it was very powerful training. And we look at it as one of two parts. In a couple minutes, I'll talk about the 10-hour use of force update. But this was the frank discussion that we had to have with our officers. Then we're going to test them in a real live training environment. Okay, pending training. Museum of Tolerance, we have an outstanding relationship with the Museum of Tolerance. We've partnered with them many, many times. They've agreed. They have a course called Building Public Trust. It's actually a 2-part course. It's racial profiling and beyond diversity. It's a good look at how to build public trust. And it's very good that we have outside entities teach our officers on topics like this. We don't want just LAPD by ourselves teaching. We want to go to other people and have them give their perspective. Museum of Tolerance, right now they boosted our representation, basically classes for the LAPD to 25. Next year we have a commitment to go to 40. So we're cycling all of our officers through this training. The use of force update, 10-hour, I'll get into that in a second. Dr. Pinnell talked about sending the 25 people to fair and impartial policing. The 80-hour police science, we'll get into that in a little bit more detail, too. We're updating the field officer training FTO curriculum. We're reprogramming about 8 hours of that. And the reprogramming will be on these specific topics: building public trust, use of force de-escalation. We're going to run scenarios with persons suspected of being mentally ill. All those hot topics are in there. OIS lesson learned videos. We used to be really, really good at that, and we dropped that ball. That's simply breaking down in OIS on a video that we could show at roll call or a divisional training day. We're going to go back into that. Use of force communication strategy that's the perf that I was talking about, that we do a real bad job explaining to the public how infrequently that we use of force. I'm working with Commander Andy Smith. We're going to, 2 days a year, we intend to have the media come to training division. We'll go through all of our training that we do, all of the strategies that we do, and ask them to get the message out. Get the message out about those statistics that we shared earlier. So it's just a strategy that the perf came up with, we agree with. Post-perishable skills, we're going to redo that. Every 2 years, Post sets minimum standards. You have to have 24 hours of training. 14 of those hours have to be on firearms, arrest and control, driving, and 2 hours on TACCOM. The problem with it, it's old school training. It's like our academy before we redid it. It's not integrated training. I wrote a letter to Post and talked with their managers. They've agreed to let us pilot creating an integrated 24 hours. We should be able to roll that out. The curriculum is being written right now. We're working with the person who's in Post Master Instructor Program to design that. I think there'll be really good training, and it won't be boring, which is
How did
important.
the 24 hours break down again?
The 24 hours breaks down that you have to have 14 hours on perishable skills. Perishable skills are defined as 4 hours on firearms training, 4 hours on driving, 4 hours on arrest and control. That's like doing twist locks and handcuffing and kind of jiu-jitsu, and 2 hours on tactical communication. That's basically communication on de-escalation. The other 10 hours are just regular CPT, and you just have to make them up in that 2-hour cycle to hit 24 hours on that.
So I would like to see more mandatory hours dedicated to de-escalation, which I also think is a perishable skill, as well as the latest on anti-bias tactics as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, in fact, those are the minimum. We go way over those. We have, in fact, I got statistics right here. We're somewhere in an officer between 55 to 155 hours, and that's compared to the 24. So we are like light years ahead. And we do concentrate a lot on use of force de-escalation. In fact, I'm going to talk about that 10-hour course, and that's going to be heavily involved in that. But that concept is being woven through all our in-service. We're going to really hit that very, very hard. Did you want to?
Well, I think something to understand is in the past we would take a topic and we would just stick to that one topic all day. It's back to kind of training that whole person piece that you can understand the law. So we do a law update, but it would be absent from the application and also the mission, vision, values. We just focus on the law in the past. What we're trying to do now is move it more to the force on force, to the situation, how did you apply it, and then we come back and debrief it. The other piece is really learning how to manage the emotion that comes with these stressful situations. And I think previously in law enforcement, the focus has been on tactical correction, but sometimes there's emotion that will hijack critical thinking and problem solving, and it happens so fast. And so what we're really keying into in many of these trainings and especially in the police sciences and leadership is to say, how are you going to take care of that part of you as an officer so that you have not just healthy outcomes, but a healthy career, and that we're going to have healthy officers over their whole career at the end of this.
Actually, Commissioner, I think you had asked us to look into this with Applied VR, which is virtual reality training. And we've actually created a partnership with Applied VR. They're developing virtual reality training. We're looking at it from the human relations perspective. There's a lot out there on the tactical, like active shooter, but we're looking at develop your skill sets in dealing with people. The only thing I would caution about virtual reality training is it's in its infancy. I believe down the road, maybe 4 or 5 years, I'm hoping sooner, that would replace force option simulators. I think it's the future, to be honest. It's just the technology has to catch up, but we're at the forefront of that. PSL2, and we talked about that. Northwestern, you want to say a couple words real quick about that?
We've been working with Northwestern University for several years, and usually once a year they take a really, really big project, and they'll look at maybe all our categorical uses of force, the locations, the divisions, where are they happening, and examine all that kind of statistical stuff that we actually we're not that good at. And so we take skilled people who do that all the time. And this year, the next one we're going to look at is non-categorical uses of force, and apply that same rigor to examining where are they happening, when are they happening, is it a time of night, is it a shift, is it the level of experience of an officer? How can we really examine where to target our training if we know when and where and how and who is involved in those incidents?
And PSL 3 design and implementation, that's going to be down the road. Did you want to go quickly on that chart? It's the first one in PSL is really about building an officer as a community leader. The second one is really about the focus on building them as an organizational leader. And the third part of that journey is building the complete leader. Do Do you want to talk about?
Back in December, when I sat down with Chief Beck and we looked at where our gaps are, when we looked at creating the LAPD University model, we really looked at how once somebody comes through the academy, they kind of go into this mill of just getting courses one after the other. And we really think that we could develop a better foundation for all officers. Right now, I can say every officer gets the academy, but I'd like to be able to say what every officer gets in their first 5 years so that I can share that with you, and we know that we've created the foundation. We have a bunch of mandatory training, but it's not all connected. So what we looked at with police sciences and leadership, so we're already made it to an acronym, PSL.
You can't design training without an acronym.
Yes, it's a rule. So PSL means that we're going to bring actually the classes back as a class. So back to that in a team, by a team, to be a team. How do you hold your class accountable? You already have camaraderie and understanding of who is who in your academy, but we don't bring them back together ever again. In police sciences and leadership, we're going to bring them back before they finish probation. So they've had some experience in the field. The other thing that we saw as a problem is in the academy, they have hypothetical situations. They've never done the job before. So adding more information to the academy doesn't make a better officer. We need them to be out in the field, have field training, have some successes and failures, and come back to training with an open mind of, by the time I leave this training, I'm going to be a police officer too. I'm going to promote and pass probation. So we want them to be as successful as possible. So the 2-week training, the first one, we're building the community leader. We will do peak performance, fair and impartial policing, purposeful communication. You think of how many interviews an officer does in the field. Let's build up that interview experience. Again, in the academy, they can practice, but they just haven't had the experience to see where their successes and failures are. So they'll be coming back. It won't be an academy class. We are not going to treat them like academy recruits because they're not. We want to take them to the next level. So we will be weaving in community relationship and purposeful communication, investigative skills, procedural justice, and successful prosecution, how to handle evidence and things like that. We met with city attorneys and our team of subject matter experts to look at where are the gaps, what are we seeing, what are we hearing from people in the field where things are falling through. So we'll give them a week of that. But the other thing that we're really excited about in the second week of police sciences and leadership, they will finish the mental illness course that we just created last year. Yep. And that one is newly enhanced based on application and is done with partners from the Department of Mental Health. They do role plays, they do scenarios, they get evaluated, they do a field trip to a service provider. It's very interactive. And in the past, we were wondering, how are we going to get all officers through that? Well, if we make it the second week of police sciences and leadership, we are pretty sure these officers are probably going to make it if they make it to 10 and 11 months after the academy. And so now we're going to give them that next enhanced experience, but they're not going to have to wait another 5 years to get the mental illness training. We're going to get that right at the beginning. So I gave you a little more detail on the first one, but since Post has a 2-year cycle for retraining people, we're going to keep with that 2-year cycle, and so we will bring the class back again for police sciences and leadership 2 in 2 years. So people will know leaving the academy what their training schedule is and when that's happening. We will integrate those post requirements, the perishable skills training, and we'll take that next PSL 80 hours to another level. And the same thing will happen 2 years after that. So in that way, we will be able to say many officers will have more than that, but as a minimum, all LAPD officers in the first 5 years will have a really sound foundation that will actually improve how we have field training officers. They'll have all of that before they even become a field training officer, and in the past they wouldn't have. So that is still in the design and works, but I can tell you right now that we have completed the lesson plans for Police Sciences and Leadership 1, and I acknowledge some of our team back here because they have put in an enormous amount of effort and work interviewing people, looking at where the gaps are, and how do we make the next generation of LAPD officers better.
Yeah, PSL 1 is, to put it in perspective, 80 hours. It's about 200 pages of lesson plan curriculum with activities in it. It's extremely in-depth. No one in the country has anything like this, to be perfectly frank. We'll be the first. And no one in the country, when we go through PSL 1, 2, and 3 at 240 hours, that's just like light years ahead of anyone. No one makes that type of commitment to a younger officer. Would be the first on that. real quickly, the use of force update, I'll just go over this. All officers are going to get sent to this. Remember, it's like a two-part. We did the discussion about preservation of life and building public trust. Now we're going to test them. We're going to bring them into a training environment. It will be 10 hours long. The curriculum was 33 pages of instruction. We were the first, again, another first for LAPD. We got that stress vest technology when I talked about force on force. We're the first that Post has approved for perishable skills, so that's a big, big deal. We did a lot of negotiations on that and to bring that technology in. We're going to spend a lot of time, Commissioner, on de-escalation. I mean, a lot of it. And really, when you boil down de-escalation, when people ask me about how do you teach de-escalation, it's three parts. Number one is expectations. Do you have a use of force policy? Do you have expectations tied to it, like preservation of life, minimum use of force? So you got to set the stage. You got to tell your officers this is what we expect. Number two, in essence, de-escalation is all about communication. We spend a ton of time on teaching people how to communicate. At Post, when we talk about that TACCOM, that is de-escalation. That's the Post-accepted version of de-escalation is talking. Non-body skills. How do you look at somebody and how do you talk to them and directive behaviors, your tone, your deflection. It's really, really intense. So that's number two, how you communicate. Number three is you got to tie it to a tactical concept. So you have the expectation, you got the ability to communicate. We teach tactical concepts like, distance plus cover equals time. The reason you teach that and the reason you're buying time is time will allow you to communicate and use those skills. Time will allow you to get additional resources at the scene, and time will allow you to make a plan. If you do all three of those, it increases the probability of an outcome that you want, which is, in effect, hopefully no use of force or the minimum use of force. And remember those statistics that I shared with you earlier. We actually do a very, very good job on that overall in the police department. So we're going to spend a lot of time on scenarios, force on force against our academy instructors. PSL, I think we already talked this to death.
Excited.
Yeah, we went ahead of time, but that's it. So any questions from anybody?
You want to start?
Sure. I have one question and then a few comments, and my comments are all very positive. The question has to do with, in the training components in the academy, what kinds of review you have on outside speakers, folks you're bringing in who aren't actual full-time trainers, because we've had some issues in the past about quality control there, and I'd just be interested to hear.
Want to take that one?
Sure. Well, one of the benefits that we have now when we train in a team, by a team, to be a team, is that there's a team of people who understand and know how the academy is supposed to be run. In the past, again, we might bring in a guest speaker and have the other person leave the room and just let them do their presentation, and that doesn't happen anymore. Right. So there's a team sergeant who's required to watch, listen, hear. So if something doesn't quite go right, we usually know about it pretty quickly. They're not left on their own to do that. And certainly then we have sort of a step-down procedure with them. Because the academy goes so quickly, we've had not as many guest speakers come into the academy, partly because if things get moved around, we need somebody that moment, and it's kind of fluid and integrated. We do try to bring in a lot of community resources in understanding or observing our training and telling us and informing us how to do it better, or we will do it on video. So that's the other way to kind of standardize, make sure every class gets the same presentation as you have something on video.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and it sounds like absolutely on the right track. I appreciate it. Just a few general comments. I am very impressed with the detail, with the seriousness with which you are taking this. Commend you and commend Chief Beck for the attention to this and the resources being devoted to this. You've made it clear, not surprising, but you have made it clear what an extraordinary leadership role the department's playing nationally on these issues. And I couldn't be happier about that. I appreciate it very much, and I recognize how much work is going into it. I share the President's comments about some of the focus, de-escalation, controlled fire. It sounds like you are right on target there, and I appreciate that. Particularly impressed with the 10-hour course. The general approach, I think, is really good, and I think the 10-hour follow-up is a very appropriate way to respond to the problem, respond to the President of the Commission initiative about the things he's interested in pursuing, and I thank you for that. Finally, I was able to attend several of the day-long national discussion trainings, and I was very impressed with the quality there. In particular, they were all good, but in particular, when I was in the Valley, the sessions led by Chief Bob Green, Commander Chris Pitcher, and Commander Regina Scott, I thought were extraordinary and so positive and helpful. Clearly, time having gone into it and things being taken very seriously, and I appreciate that and acknowledge all the work. And finally, I just a request to, at some point when it's appropriate, I'd be interested in seeing the curriculum and the opportunity to actually sit in when we can do that without getting in the way.
No problem. We'll get
because the more I think we know about the specifics, I think the better. But overall, I can't say enough good things. And thank you. I thank the Chief for the effort.
And let me take an opportunity on the national discussion. That was Deputy Chief Bob Green's idea. He worked very, very hard, so I want to give him a shout out for that. He did a great job on that.
Well, it shows that he worked very hard, and it was very positive.
I just have a question, trying to understand it. I've seen Bob Green. He's the perfect person to talk about why.
Your microphone, ma'am.
When I heard of, I went to a training where he talks to the community about why we hate cops. You know, what the things that were going on back then, what he was trained to do, what he did. And so it was really powerful to me because he was reflecting on something that I've been wanting to hear for such a long time, that it was not the right way. In terms of our police force, we're in the training. We're all raised with our own biases, you know, family biases, you know, whatever. And is there part of this training where we reflect on things that we heard as kids? You know, maybe our parents were, you know, prejudice against another group, and we hear that growing up. It might not even be in the home, it could be in the community.
Absolutely, and that's a foundational piece of the fair and impartial policing. I think what made it very positive with the command staff and why we chose to now train the trainers for the rest of our department is the recognition of we all grow up in society and we all come to anything we do with our own set of biases. And I think part of the hurt and pain is when people feel that people are being called racist. And that has caused a lot of defensiveness and people to go to their corners and to not examine who they are and what they bring. And so looking at the science of how biases start, that's a big part of the fair and impartial policing. And when we look at the science and the history of how that gets established for all of us, we can be less defensive and go, well, we all have a piece to own in this, and how can I improve my piece? How can I improve my part? It's not that we can remove it instantly, but we can change and alter how we respond to information. And so that's an exciting part of where we're going next. And you'll see that what we want to get away from, again, is just doing a one-day inoculation of something where you'd see a part of it in that 10-hour course, but we're not going to make a big announcement about it. It's just going to be woven in. This is the best way to do your job. And then we'll continue to enhance that in other training as well.
Yeah, just let me share. Way back when we signed the consent decree back in 2001, I was a lieutenant. I was running in-service training. Many departments would handle an issue like that by doing like a 10-hour training day or 2-day training. What we chose to do back then, and it goes to our philosophy, is to take all of those paragraphs that were tied to training on integrity and police misconduct, and we wrote curriculum in 111 courses. Because if you want to make change, you just can't do it in 8 hours. You have to spread it across the board. That was painstaking. It took us years to do that, but that's the right way to do it. That's how you change culture, and that's our philosophy. You integrate it across the board. You don't just do a one-day training.
I think this is a keeper. I think this was a very memorable and important presentation. I think it's really unfortunate that a lot of the very people that could have benefited by it and who come up here and yell at us about these things through their own actions get either thrown out or leave before they even get a chance to hear something like this. Because if what they're talking about is true, then they've got to have some room to absorb some of this. I think this was really terrific. I have three questions, and there's not, I don't think there's right or wrong answers. I just sort of want to see your reaction to them.
Sure.
Number one, real-time lessons learned. Things are popping every week. Ferguson, Cleveland, Baltimore, Eric Garner in New York. The idea that everybody's walking around putting cameras in the faces of officers and saying things to officers. You know, nobody wants... How many arrests do you have a day? 385 a day. I don't think two want to be... I mean, nobody wants to be arrested. So the idea that you're talking them down is just remarkable. My question is, what is there enough communication? I believe there is, but I just want to make sure. Enough communication that there isn't much lag time between these major real events that are happening now and your guys taking a look at current events in your training that you can actually get into those.
Yeah, we move very quickly, and I'll let Dr. Pennell jump in a second. But first, it goes back to the streets. What happens out there when an incident occurs? We expect a debrief from a supervisor on the spot. So whatever it is, they got to talk about it right there. Whether the positives, the negatives. That's what roll call. Unfortunately, we used to have about 45 minutes of roll call training. Now it's dramatically condensed, but even today they still make time to discuss incidents right on the spot. That's what you have to do. Now, in addition to that, what we are as training managers, we're always looking out there for the hot topics or an incident occur. That's how we get to this point, to be perfectly frank. We're out there looking for what it is, what are other departments doing about it. On de-escalation, that's a good example. Everybody in the country is paying attention to that. And we can move quickly. We have a lot of skill set on the LAPD. We take pride in our training, our history in training, and we'll design training very, very fast and roll it out. So we don't wait.
I just think one of the things that has shifted for us since we changed how we train to more of facilitation. In the past, people would be sitting in rows and they wouldn't get a chance to even bring their own real experiences to training. Or maybe that one kind of loudmouth guy does and he just dominates the whole room. So now that we're training in a team, by a team, to be a team, they're at tables, they're conversing. We give problems to each table, and people have that chance more so now. And we train that way in the academy so that when they get into in-service training, they're not going, what is this? Why do I have to participate? Okay. People roll up their sleeves and they start going, yeah, I had this problem. So some of it's the real incidents that happen, but it's the things that they experience that we're now able to also benefit from the shift that we've had in training. And I think that's really in the last 7 years that to get there, where now when people come to training, they expect to engage and they expect to be challenged and they expect to have learning activities that make them think outside the box or incorporate their previous skills.
Okay, so give me 15, just your reaction to this. There's good training that gets unlearned. I would bet you a dime to whatever that every single cop that comes out of the academy puts their seatbelt on. Mm-hmm. Then what happens? They are going to be taught, reinforced. Something is happening to where 25% of them, when they get in these accidents, aren't wearing seatbelts. So the question is, as far as training goes about learned behavior, what about warning them about things that are going to be coming up to them to try and peer pressure or whatever it's going to be, the older, whatever, to unlearn things.
Okay,
go for it.
I'll add on.
No, well, that's kind of the exciting part about getting them back as a class.
Yeah.
They already all care about each other. We were already going to be the best class ever in LAPD. So how do you help them to continue that aspiration? When we send people to 26 different places in the city, sometimes you can lose that connection of who we are. And I think by bringing them back as a class, and really that's part of the leadership component, we are going to address that with them and say, we know that there are gaps between what you saw in the academy and how you experienced it in the field. And again, now let's talk about them. Let's talk about how you resolve those gaps. But it's better in a supportive environment where they already know all the players in the room. And so they are going to help. We're going to have them at the end of that class set some goals for themselves individually and as a class, so that when they come back in 2 years, there's something to aspire to. We think we can really weave that mission, vision, values through the department better with that 5-year plan.
Okay.
Just add real quickly on that. What I would do too is a lot of it is leadership. On the seatbelt, I would go to roll call when I was a captain. I would tell the story that it was my classmate was the only one that survived the Central crash. That was the greatest loss of life. Because going back to like the national discussion, when you hear it from people who had a real life experience, it's much more powerful. So that's what you have to change their behavior. You have to get out there and say, hey. And I used to challenge in all my tours and training, I would say, find me the one time that the seatbelt was on an officer and they get injured or killed. Just find me that and we'll have the discussion. I'm still waiting for that to come forward. So you share that.
Last one.
Yep.
And again, just a couple of seconds, just your reaction. Back to what the president's been saying about de-escalation and our training in de-escalation. Do you agree that certain behaviors and outcomes are better taught through positive reinforcement than saying you don't do it this way, you don't do it that way, but you teach them to do based on what's right to do instead of what's wrong to do?
Well, that's the doctor could go into the training triangle on the bottom square, which is the most important, the effective. What we're trying to do is internalization. I've heard her speak to this many, many times. We could teach you the tactical skills. We could teach you the problem solving. We can't teach you character and integrity. That's the base model. So when we can get to you and say, hey, you should be doing this because it's the right thing to do and you believe it, that's when you have a home run. That's when it goes well.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for all the hard work you put into this. It really showed in the presentation. Chief Murphy, we had an opportunity to sit down for a few hours last week and go through this, and it's obvious that this is not just a high priority for the department, but a particular high priority for you. You obviously care about these issues deeply, and that has certainly come through. As we've discussed, and I've said again and again, this is an area that I plan on paying particular attention to. I firmly believe that a lot of the problems we're seeing with use of force and anti-bias policing can be greatly reduced through proper training. And you and I talked about this a bit last week. We have a uniquely diverse city. So tactics that might make sense in East LA may not make sense in South LA or the Harbor. And I think we have to be very mindful of that when we're training our officers. And also, and I know you believe in this as well, the training has to be dynamic. We have to be constantly looking at what's working, what's not working, with an eye towards improving. I don't have any additional questions, but I do have 2 requests.
Sure.
I want to make sure that the Commission remains involved with the current and proposed department-wide training updates. So I would like the Office of the Inspector General to have ongoing access to the training design and implementation of these updates, especially when the training involves use of force and constitutional policing. And secondly, I'd like the Office of the Inspector General to attend and monitor the Tactics and Training Review Committee. I want to ensure the Commission stays up to date with the changes that are being made and considered. I don't think that requires a motion, but I would appreciate the concurrence of my fellow commissioners.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, no problem. We're actually already doing that, but the TTRC, yep, you're invited.
Great. Well, thanks again. I'm very impressed with where we are, and I look forward to visiting the academy. I look forward to attending one of the 10-hour de-escalation days, and getting more.
Hey, Commissioner Saltzman had one more question.
Oh, sorry.
No, I just wanted to make one last comment that I had left out, which was as a now retired educator. It's just so impressive to me to see you incorporating the research there is about learning, how effective teaching and effective learning into those. The fact that it's interactive, the fact that it's personal. Chief Green, Commissioner Figueroa Villa pointed out, Chief Green's presentation in the day-long training, there are so many examples when he talks about what he used to do, what he used to think, what happened, and what he's thinking now. And it's so clear in research on education that those two things, personalizing it and making it interactive, are part of what makes it effective in teaching. And I just, again, commend you for that, and thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bravo.
We do have
public comments.
9 public comment cards. Prentice Jenkins, he's not here. General Jeff, Michael Williams, the Red Chief Hunt, and Tut Hayes.
Good morning, I believe it is. Commissioners, my name is General Jeff, and I am a Skid Row community activist. While the first slide in this presentation started off with the 3 words, building an officer, that is very eye-opening in and of itself. And I just want to point out that as kids, we are all taught to always tell the truth and to never lie. But when you join the department, you're taught to lie for the best interests of the department. So because of that, there are very inner core values that are compromised, and that creates doubt, it creates fear, and it creates panic in the officers. And so then the officers are then given weaponry and the power of governance over the rest of the citizens in the city of Los Angeles. And this presentation does not evaluate or even address the inner core and the depths of the inner core that this actually goes down to when we talk about the doubt and the fear, where the roots that it comes from. And so it's also fails to recognize that it's deep down and connected to the DNA of each human being. And so because of that, in every account when the officers interact with the public, when we recognize that doubt, that fear, and that panic, we lose trust in the officers. We lose confidence in the officers, in the abilities of the officers. And so because there's automatically reasons why there's escalations, and it's not it hasn't been addressed appropriately in this presentation. So while the commission is singing its praises, there's still room for growth. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Hunt? You can start.
Good afternoon. The Red Chief Hunt is speaking. I really want to speak on officers and common sense training. I come from Dr. Herschel Swinger, and in the Sheriff Academy, we taught common sense. A lot of people don't know I used to work for the youth activity right after the riots, and a lot of the problems were solved by the youth center and the people being able to trust the deputies and the officers that work there. Seems we don't have that in Los Angeles. We don't have common sense theory. I've been arrested 70 times, and the last time I was arrested for filming an incident from somebody getting their head bashed in from LAPD. I didn't like it. I don't like what I see. And Captain John Peters' era, when he was at the Pacific Division, we talked about that. We stopped all of that. We worked together. Some officers are not trained to work together. When Chief Beck first came out of the mayor's house, he said he's going to stop all this knick-knack, tacky-whack policing. And there's some chiefs or some captains of the station still believe in that, but they do just the opposite what the chief says. Well, here's what I really recognize: common sense. There's no police activities that can deal with the parents 101, and there's no way of teaching common sense in the academy. You just have to learn that, or you have to be screened for that. And when that Dr. Swinger passed away, he left me in charge of the city of Los Angeles to understand and to run the statistics of that, and it's not being done properly. And if anybody knew who Dr. Herschel Swinger was, he could run the whole California system and things like that. And I was one of his trainees. 2010, he left me as the master of Los Angeles. And you guys really don't understand if I were you theory, and this is what the officers don't understand, and this is the reason why they're shooting before they think. Captain John Peters was one of the best captains of the Pacific Division. He talked with the people.
Thank you for your comments.
Constitutional policing. There's a camera in the lobby that's broken. It's called an X-ray machine. Been complaining about that forever. So consequently, stop and frisk is taking place at the police station in the lobby. Our constitutional rights are being violated at the police department in the lobby because we don't have enough money to fix that machine, buy a new machine, or whatever. And I've been talking about this for 4 months, 6 months now. I don't know whether it's run its warranty, whatever, but that's wrong. You can't have these invasions of property just because you refuse to get the machine fixed. Now, I appreciate Commissioner Silveroff talking about unlearning certain things. We're back to training day. Yeah, there's one way to do it, and then there's the cops' way to do it. Unlearning those procedures that they find out are more effective what the cops' way of doing it rather than the training way to do it. Doing it by the book isn't necessarily the best way to do it. We know that. But the book says that you clear the room and readmit those who were not disruptive. But no, you sent the officers out to put people out. They were confronted with either arresting a woman who refused to go or leaving her alone. And when the officers have to back down, that's a horrible thing for the public to see. Officers never have to back down. They should always be correct or implement 148. So finally you decided to do it by the book and clear the room and then readmit those who weren't not creating a disturbance. But some people who were not creating a disturbance were not allowed back in because officers were determining that. That's your responsibility to determine who's not to come back in, not police. It's not going to be a police commission meeting with the police running it.
The next four
Thank you for your
cards.
comments.
Melina Abdullah is not present. Jamie Garcia is not present. Pete White and Hamid Khan. Okay, we're now on item number 5.
Yes.
Public comment. We have 13 cards.
Excellent. Thanks, Bill.
Nia Amina Minor is not present. The Red Chief Hunt. Greg Akili. Anthony Ratcliffe. Beth Baker. Prentice Jenkins. And General Jeff.
Thank you again. Can you please set the time correctly? The Red Chief Hunt is calling for calm in the meetings. Number one, Matt Johnson, I'm going to believe into you. I'm going to believe what you say. I'm going to sit down and talk with you after this meeting. Number two, we just can't throw everybody out the meeting. You have to have a public forum, 8:30 to 9:30, to get all these angry issues out. This is what we're not doing right. It's easy to throw somebody out, but it's more easier to listen to somebody early in the morning and take up their problems and solve them. Democrats solve problems and put people first. You can arrest me 800 times, but not get nothing but bad results. That's what you have done. You've got bad results in lawsuits one after another for arresting me for something that I know better than. Like I said, Dr. Herschel Swinger actually left me in charge. A lot of people don't know who the master is. I'm one of the masters that can come in here and master the meeting and make everything happen. But I can't make it happen without you guys. You guys are these people's problems, and what they're saying is that they're angry at you guys because you guys don't sit down and you guys don't solve problems. And if you guys keep on not solving problems, I'm going to go to these people's sides and help them solve you guys' problems, put everything in the newspaper, because corruption starts right there. Solving problems start right here. So you guys need to start solving people's problems and listening to them, calling them back, respecting them, 8:30. I need to have a circle of nothing but all of you guys out here writing down people's problems so there won't be any disruptions. And that's the only way you're going to solve the problem. Now, I'm giving you good information. Anybody who's ever followed my information has become winners, such as me, the 9th Circuit winner, Michael Hunt. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comments.
General Jeff, followed by Nancy Allen, Jamie Garcia, and Michael Williams.
Good afternoon. What do I have to say? The appearance of this commission is actually flawed. The purpose of the police commission is supposed to be a civilian oversight of the Los Angeles Police Department. However, the way it is structured now, there's lots of room for unnecessary power and pressure and influence from the LAPD put on this commission. How can you be separate from the commission where you hold your very meetings inside of LAPD's headquarters? There's Deaton Auditorium. It's literally steps away from here. At least this commission should consider and actually should just move the meetings there. So it's not within, you're stuck to the umbilical cord. You're sucking on the bosom of the Los Angeles Police Department, which is the very entity that you're supposed to be overseeing. It's very difficult for the public to even view you and respect you as an independent governing entity when you're so connected and joined at the hip with the very department that you're supposed to be overseeing. And so, you definitely, while you're trying to institute reform within the officers themselves, you need to reform the commission itself and be more open and transparent to the very people that you're supposed to represent, which is the citizens of the city of Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Nancy D. Allen, Melina Vula, who's not present, Pastor Q, Jean Marie, and Ted Hayes.
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank you for some of the comments that I heard this afternoon. They were actually very good, so I can tell that that you all are definitely trying, and I think that's commendable. I did hear a couple things that caused concern for me. Number one, when I guess the trainers were talking about constitutional policing, and they mentioned people suspected of being mentally ill. I was concerned about, as a mental health professional, I was concerned about, well, how is it that they're going to determine that? And, there's a lot of training that goes into being a psychologist, a social worker, a psychiatrist. I think that's a lot to put on officers to try and determine first. I also think that it creates another atmosphere. I think it creates almost, again, the surveillance, the watching, the quote-unquote policing, and in turn what that does is really deny the person their constitutional rights. It's almost, again, even how people are determined, they're saying people are terrorists, so therefore they're watching them, they're surveilling them. Why? What that does, in my opinion, is creates a type of duplicity for the officers. They have to wear one hat where they're trying to protect and serve, and then wear another hat where they're watching and surveilling and trying to draw some conclusions about a person that's actually denying due process. They're being smeared. I don't understand it. I think it's unfair to officers to be put in that type of position. I think it creates like a split in them, and then I think it adds to it threatens their well-being. In my opinion, their mental state and their own well-being. It's not fair. It's not fair to officers, and it's not fair to civilians, especially people who have no background in a mental health background or being a terrorist. So that's my comment. Thank
you for your comments.
Pastor Q, Jean Marie, and Mr. Hayes. He's on here. Thank you.
There was a thing called the Promise Zone. It was the outsourcing of the failure of the war on poverty. South Central did not achieve any assistance from the Promise Zone because The construct of the Promise Zone is simply this. All the organizations, NGOs, Boys and Girls Club, Urban League, NAACP, even the police department, get together in the various areas of the city and make a grant proposal to the government. South Central didn't do it because the Boys and Girls Club didn't organize, the NAACP didn't organize, and the Urban League did not organize and get together to make a grant proposal for the Promise Zone in South Central. That's where you came from, Mr. Johnson. You were on the board of the Boys and Girls Club. You talked to the staff. You were on the board of Urban League. You talked to the staff, but you did not get the Promise Zone in South Central, where the crime is, where the education is failing and faltering, where everything is wrong and desperately in need of some assistance. You did not do that, sir. You were doing entertainment. You were doing Hollywood. And that's why you can't be here, because you don't have credentials that suggest that you are a doer. It suggests that you are a failure and been linked with failure in the various organizations that would do the most to improve South Central. That's why you can't be here, sir. You have to leave because you gave us no Promise Zone, and you cannot be forgiven for that. And you cannot sit here representing South Central or anyone else because of your history, sir.
Thank you for your comments.
And there are no other public comment cards. We now go to item number 6, closed session. The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss item number 6A1 in accordance with Government Code 54957.
Yeah, they're in the back, sir.
What are we waiting for?
Okay, are we ready to go, Maria? Do we have to get, how do we have to do
As
this?
soon as they start.
Okay. You got the item, right?
Yes. The Board of Police Commissioners has concluded its work in closed session. We are back in open session. In closed session, item number 6A1 was discussed and the Chief's recommendations were unanimously adopted. Mr. President, is there a motion for adjournment?
We have a second? All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jen Mahoney in Studio City. You're watching LA City View Channel 35, where you can get the best in culture and arts. It's our city, it's our channel.
Hey! You stop!
Hi there, I'm Kaya Dunn. Welcome to NASA Launchpad. Are we alone? No, not you or me, but everyone, everything we know. Earth. Are we alone in the universe? Or is Earth not so unique after all?